Queen, remember your reign. Queen, remember your reign. Queen, remember your reign. Queen, remember your reign. Welcome everyone to Queen, Remember Your Reign Lionsgate Summit 2026 with me, your host, Eimear Stassin. And this summit comprises of conversations to help you remember the royal divine truth of who you truly are. And today I'm speaking with Luke Eastwood. Hi, Luke.
Hi, how are you, Emma?
Good. It's great to have you here today.
Great. Well, thanks for having me.
You're
Delighted
welcome.
to be here.
It is, isn't it? And I'll share with people who you are for those who don't yet know you. Luke Eastwood is a graduate of City University in London. He's worked for financial institutions and publishers in London and Dublin, mostly in the name of graphic design. Luke began studying Druidism in 1996 and is currently a member of OBOD, the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids, and the Druid Clan of Dana. After dropping out, I love that, of corporate life and retraining in horticulture, Luke began his career as a part-time author in 2011. And he has 12 books published to date and more coming, which you'll talk about today. And Luke currently lives off-grid in the west of Ireland. And Luke does not use AI for his work. And I'm so excited about your topic today, Luke. We're talking about Scotia, the extraordinary life of an Egyptian queen. Whoa. So I know you've written a book about this, and we will link people to the book, and you've got it there
Yeah, I
for,
have it. Will I show you? There
yeah,
you go.
yeah,
That's the cover.
there she
Now,
is.
that's a beautiful image from it's actually in a museum. I think I forget which museum. I think it might be Berlin in
Wow.
museum there where they have that. Of course, unfortunately for the Egyptians, a lot of their precious artifacts have been looted by all kinds of people and are scattered all over the world.
Yeah,
I was very lucky to get to see some of the stuff from that region actually in Melbourne, would you believe?
really.
Yeah, there was a traveling exhibition of called Pharaoh, which is going around the world. And when I was in Australia, I happened to be there. So I got to see all the stuff and actually stuff that belonged to Mary Taton and her father and her mother was just literally, half a meter away from me, where I could almost touch it. It's mad to believe to actually be right next to this stuff that belonged to these people I've written about, um, that were around 3,000 odd years ago. And
Incredible.
Akhenaten's rings that he wore and stuff like that. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. And I took photographs, some of which are actually in here, you know.
That's amazing.
So it was just pure serendipity and amazing luck. I think there was about maybe 13 or 14 exhibits that actually related to what I was writing about. So I
My,
took photographs of it all, made notes, and ended up in the book.
that's so amazing. So it really feels like Queen Scotia or Scotia has really been communing with you. And what was so going back to before writing the book, what was your impetus or your inspiration for writing about her? I know you share some of this in the book, but it'd
Yeah.
be nice for readers to know.
Well, I'd heard about her, but I didn't really know an awful lot. And then my friend Gary Brannigan was writing a book, and one thing and another, he was having trouble. So he said, "Oh, well, look, I'm under pressure. Could you help me to get it done?" This book's called Kerry Folktales. So I took on about, half the book. And one of the stories in there was called The Pharaoh's Daughter, which he'd written. So I, of course, read that and thought, oh, yeah, I know the story a bit. And then I did another book called Dingle Folk Tales on my own, and I did a slightly longer, different version. And I've been to see Scotia's grave in near Tralee, and good friend of mine who illustrated that first book and then a subsequent book, the Dingle Folk Tales, actually designed an obelisk with um, a stonemason called Billy Lean. And just outside in a village called Clahan, where leads up to the entrance to Scotia's grave. Well, not really an entrance, it's sort of a access, which is another 30 minutes walk at least. But the way you get in, on the way there, there's this obelisk, which was commissioned by, I think, Tralee County Council. So her name's Elena Denan. She doesn't do so much illustration work now. She's a writer in her own, of her own now, and has her own uh, sort of career away from illustration. But she did the hieroglyphs and the design for this obelisk that was then made by the stonemason.
Wow.
So I went along and I saw that as well, of course. So it was really interesting. She told me all about that. And then I was actually driving to work every day in Tralee when I got the job, when I moved down here. And I used to drive past it twice a day, this obelisk on the way to and from work. So I went back again a few times. And then when it was raining, I discovered something really amazing. I remember seeing a couple of very faint lines on the central stone of her grave. And I thought, well, I wonder what that is. And then when it rained really heavily, you could see a lot more. So I took photographs. And then, in the process of writing the book, I thought, gosh, I must have a look at those photographs. And then I I borrowed a book of hieroglyphs off an archaeologist, and two of the shapes I found correspond
Wow.
exactly, pretty much with hieroglyphs. And there's look what appears to be a very faint cartouche, which is the royal names would be written into a cartouche, which is a sort of lozenge thing. So you'd write the name of whoever, Tutankhamun or Khufu or whatever, inside this sort of long sort of lozenge. So it looks like there's could be one of those. It's so old and it's faint and it's been weathered, and what it really needs is someone who's got the right equipment, who's a real expert to actually look at that and scan it properly and see if these things are, they don't certainly don't look random, you know. So they
Yeah.
actually correspond with actual hieroglyphs to the sort of symbol things I found, but you can't see them except in the rain. So I just
Mm.
happened to be there on a rainy day one time, and so yeah, I'm glad I took those photographs, you know.
Yeah. That's incredible. And maybe that's why her grave is in Ireland, because the chances of rain are higher. So how do we
Well, I
know
think it's a
then?
bunch of happy accidents,
Yeah.
and I happen to know an archaeologist who knows about all this stuff and actually has visited Mary Taten's grave in Egypt, which was never used, an empty grave. So there's all these little connections that seem to be leading me to this story over and over. And I thought, God, I'm going to have to write a book about this because there's just way too much sort of coincidental things. And I did get quite a bit of help from people in academia as well, especially because I don't speak Spanish, and there's a big connection with Spain as well before she got to Ireland. So I needed some help there because, you know, I can't, it's going to take me, what, 5 years to learn Spanish and whatever, go and read all this stuff. So I managed to get some help with translation of important pieces of work and what have you, you know.
Yeah. Incredible. Incredible. I'm so glad for the so-called coincidences that were,
Mm.
clues for you to follow the trail and that you did follow the trail as well.
Yeah. Well, it's
And
amazing. The story is really quite amazing.
yeah,
Of
yeah.
her real name, I've concluded, is is Mary Taton. The thing is, from the time period, we know that Akhenaten and Nefertiti had many children. So it was a process of elimination. You can get rid of the people that have already died, and uh, one particular daughter managed to outlive everybody else. She married her half brother Tutankhamun, and then she married uh, the next guy called Horemheb, and then he died, and she married the next pharaoh after. So she was actually married to three pharaohs, and then she died. And so I've got a diagram in here if I can find it. Where is it now? That shows you the family tree. I'm trying to find it now.
Yeah, and that's really
Yeah.
helpful.
So this explains basically who the people are and what their relationships are to each other. So, because when you're reading it and you just think, who's that again? And like, oh, you know, it can be a little bit confusing. Yeah. So it's very hard to say her sister's name. Anke Sinpatin, I think is her correct name. She married an old guy called and then Horemheb was the final guy in the dynasty. And part of him setting up the next dynasty, the 19th dynasty, was to erase all history of Mary Taton, of Nefertiti, and Akhenaten. And so basically, they just disappeared from history for a very long time. And that whole city was lost in the sand for thousands of years until it was rediscovered. And then they started doing a bit of archaeology, and eventually we end up with the full story of what happened there and why she left. It's all linked to Akhenaten and his revolutionary religion. you know Monotheism was not very common. In fact, this predates sort of modern day, sort of more modern Judaism. And many people could speculate. I'm not going to say it's definitely true, but you could suggest that um, sort of a more modern form of Judaism was very much influenced by um, Akhenaten's Artanism, because you had a female deity in early Judaism as well as Yahweh and his wife, and they even had tiny little figurines where you had a pair. Later on, you end up with just the Father, Yahweh. And I wonder if maybe Artanism didn't have a physical representation of a figure, a man or a woman. Artanism just had a sun disk, which represent the all-powerful, the source, a bit like the Om symbol in some respects, as the Godhead. So it was basically monotheism. And I wonder if they were somewhat influenced by that, because obviously the Jews left Egypt and they went off to the Levant region, and it mutated, it changed, and so that means another whole offshoot. You could probably do another book just on that. But really,
Yeah.
Scotia, as she's become known here, um, would have had no choice really to escape, or she would have been killed. Like everyone
Yeah.
else in her family ended up dead, one way or another.
Yeah.
And their graves were desecrated, etc. So she fled. She fled because it was really her only option.
Right. Wow. Yeah, because that's what I was going to ask you. How does Meritaten then make her way, well, Spain, end up in Ireland, and what's the connection then? How do you deduce, without giving
Mm.
everything away in the book, but like for
Wow.
readers to go on this journey, how then do you link Meritaten to Scotia?
Well, there's a very interesting record from the Hittite Empire which survived, which is called the Zenyatta affair, I think it's called, the Zendana affair. Yeah. So basically, what happened was one of a queen of Egypt. You see, they use these funny royal names which don't refer to their personal name. You had a weird system where you have multiple different names for an important royal person. So you'd have a formal name, you'd have like a particular royal name. You might have a your own name, and then you have like pet nicknames which were used in the family. So you could have like four different names. So, but in the royal correspondence, it would say, the great queen of, of Upper Egypt or something like that, and it wouldn't specify exactly what their personal name was. So you'd have to kind of guess. So through elimination, it was obvious to me that the letter that's recorded on a tablet in cuneiform, which is the old sort of Syrian, Assyrian script, which comes from Mesopotamia originally. Um, it describes this Queen of Egypt asking for help and want to be rescued. So that's in the correct time period. And people have speculated that it was um, Tutankhamun's wife. But the thing is, she specifies her husband has died already, and we know the exact date of the letter because of the war that started between Egypt and the Hittite Empire the year later. So we know exactly when this letter was written, and this was written before Tutankhamun died. So we know it definitely wasn't the younger sister. It could only really have been Mary Taton who wrote this because her and her husband ruled together. She actually became a queen after the death of her mother. Her father elevated her to the status of great royal wife, which effectively means you're a queen. So he made his daughter queen, and then she then ruled with her husband, who then died, unfortunately. There's a lot of death in this family line, really awful disasters. So anyway, so Smenkhera was her husband's name. When he died, she wrote and asked for help. So there's a record of this, which has somehow managed to survive on a clay tablet. There's a picture of it in the book. Um, so we know that this happened, this request, and we also know that Mary Taton's grave is empty and was never used. We also know of all the children and the family, they found Nefertiti, they found Akhenaten after a long time, and they found all the children apart from her. She's the only one hasn't been found. And I think that's the reason why she's not been found and will never be found in Egypt, is because she left. So you can't have a corpse for someone who's not there.
Yeah.
So she would have left. How she left is uncertain. It could have been Mycenaeans, Phoenicians that helped her, or her own Egyptian entourage. But she left. And according to the story, she went to Greece and then to Spain. Didn't spend long in Greece, spent many years in Spain. Had to leave Spain because of a dispute there, sort of like, I suppose, warring with the locals, possibly. Something went very badly wrong in Spain. Ended up, according to two different versions, first in Scotland and then into Ireland, and then into Ireland. And of course, her descendants became the famous, people of Scotia, and Scotland is named after her as a result because they left Ireland and migrated to Scotland. And that's all, why the Scottish language is almost the same as Irish because the massive influence of Ireland on Scotland's history. And how she got the name Scotia or Scotter, no, nobody knows the answer to that. Why she wasn't called by her Egyptian name, we don't know. But she remarried and had children, and her children went on to be, they were Malaysian royalty, and there's just so much information, even in the archaeology, but no one's really joined the actual records, the legends, the old books, um, like the Book of Takey of Ireland describes it in several accounts. That's not, no one's really kind of overlaid the actual archaeology with that to see if they match up. And that's what I've tried to do. And going through um, the events in Spain and looking for archaeological evidence there too, and Scotland. And there is surprisingly, I think Scotland used to be bigger, you're probably aware of that, than what it is now. So in the sort of region on the east coast, in the right at the bottom of Scotland, as it was then, they found an Egyptian boat dating back to that time period, the remains of a boat, a big one, not like some little rowing boat, a big, huge ship. I think there may have been more than one, if I remember. So when
My
you
God.
add up all these things, one piece on itself doesn't really prove anything. But when you've got this sort of, uh, I don't know what you would call it, sort of a sort of massive cornucopia of small bits of evidence, and you add them all together, it really does show like a pattern, like a trail of breadcrumbs leading to to Kerry.
That's amazing. Which is called the Kingdom of Kerry in its own.
Yes. And local people around here, they know about her and they know her grave and she's known, but in other parts of Ireland, maybe not quite so much, you
Yeah.
know, unless people who have a big interest in history may be more aware of her, but I'd say the average person doesn't really know that much. When you look at um, some of the more recent archaeology, you have connections through DNA and also through artifacts from Egypt. So people dismiss this as nonsense. In fact, even an academic I spoke to here, he works in the University of Limerick, and he just poo-pooed it all. But if you actually look at all, I went through as many archaeological papers and academic, research as I could. There is there is evidence. I mean, up on the hill of Tara, they found somebody buried there known as the Tara Prince who had Egyptian jewelry from that time period. And there's so much to corroborate this. If you really dig and you find it and you carefully look at it, I was willing to sort of just keep an open mind. I didn't write the book going, I'm going to prove whatever. If I got to a point where I found some information that completely disproved it, I would have had to probably abandon the book, probably. But everything I found was the opposite. It was corroborating everything.
Amazing. It's
Uh,
so amazing. And so when she fled, is there what did she bring with her? Like if she did flee with her entourage by
we
boat,
don't know.
yeah,
Nobody knows what she brought with her. I would imagine someone of her status and wealth. If you look at what the discoveries of uh, the ancient pharaohs, they had unimaginable wealth. So I'd imagine she'd have bought sort of precious metals and jewels. She'd have bought a certain amount of soldiers with her. She probably had a loyal, they would have had a personal royal guard, no doubt. Maybe they would have gone with her. You see, because what Akhenaten did, the entire priesthood of ancient Egypt were up in arms and they couldn't have an open revolt. But as soon as Akhenaten died, things started to go badly wrong because here the whole sort of governmental structure started to fall apart. Tutankhamun actually was forced to change his name. People don't know this, but he wasn't born Tutankhamun. He was Tutankhaten, I think is that the right way to say. He removed the Aten from his name and put Amun there because the cult of Amun Ra was basically what had been going on before for nearly 1,000 years. And he just came along. He was called um, Amenhotep the fourth, he changed his name to Akhenaten, and he created this new religion. And of course, the whole country was in shock. But he effectively sacked all these people, you know. So it's imagine like say, I know, can you imagine say the Pope just fired all the cardinals, all the priests, and says from now on we don't have Jesus anymore. We're going to have I don't know, we're going to have Papa Smurf or something. He's
Or
now the
Bridget. We'll have
yeah
Bridget. Let's have her.
yeah we'll go for that. Yes, that would be yeah, it's a bit unrealistic, Papa Smurf. But yeah, we'll
Oh,
go with say
sorry.
Bridget then. The priesthood would all go bananas probably. They wouldn't like having a woman instead of a male god. And you had all these deities. You had a huge pantheon, and you know, you had sort of Ra at the top of this, who was sort of neither male or female really, encapsulated both, fused with Amun because you had the two kingdoms that are joined. And so these people were really powerful and they would have wanted to get rid of this. And that's what happened after the Amarna dynasty was gone. They reinstated everything. In fact, it was actually Tutankhamun, in order to try and avoid being sort of, deposed, had already begun that process. And he abandoned the city and reinstated everything. But I think it was too little, too late. He died under in mysterious circumstances, quite young. I think he was 18 years old, and that was just the end of it. They just tried to sweep it all under the carpet as if it never happened. And I think Mary Taton was very lucky to get away. And how much she could have brought with her, I don't know. She probably would have brought books, well, papyri there would have been. Um, she would have brought all kinds of artifacts, and we don't actually know because the Scottish and Irish stories don't go into that much detail. They really don't. They say, they mention about battles and they mention about her husband and they mention uh, about this huge tower in Spain, which is covered in the book. Apparently, they could see Ireland from there, but you wouldn't have been able to really. But somehow, actually, what is interesting is the currents. If you jump on in a boat off of sort of northeast Spain and just didn't do anything and just sat in it, there's a good chance you might end up on the Dingle Peninsula because the currents will just carry you across to Ireland, for more than likely, without you doing
Amazing.
anything at all, which is quite
Amazing.
amazing.
Yeah.
So,
All
um,
roads lead to Dingle. I knew it.
yeah. So, we don't know really a lot about um, what happened to her. We know that she died in the Battle of Slieve Mish, which is the mountain range of just at the beginning of the Dingle Peninsula, that she fell from her horse and she was killed there. We don't know if she was shot. We don't know, she could be hit with an arrow or a spear. She could have just fallen off her horse. Someone could have, hit her with a sword. We don't know. She doesn't describe her death. It just tells that she died at that battle. And then the Malaysians who are like the what we call the modern Gaels, they defeated the Tuatha at that battle, and they moved further in, and then the war continued, and eventually they took over the whole of Ireland.
Yeah.
But I think she may have only been in Ireland a very short time because they'd only literally arrived and they had to fight their way onto the island through at the Dingle Peninsula. And she could have actually literally been here a few weeks for all we know before she got killed. But she started a sort of a dynasty here, if you like. Her children, they carried on and they became very important in the history of Ireland. And as I said, they migrated to Scotland. Eventually, um, Dalradia, the kingdom of the whole western side, that was basically run and created by her descendants. So, her offspring spread throughout Ireland, and you had a bunch of little kingships in all over the place, lots of different kingdoms. But many of those would have been descended. They traced their lineage back to her
Wow.
and Mill, who was a very important. That's the way where the name Malaysians comes from.
The son's
Um,
meal.
yeah.
Yes. Oh,
So these people who went to Ireland were to Scotland, I mean, they were very proud of their heritage. They were incredibly proud to be descended from her. And that's why it became known as Scotland, the land of Scotia or Scotia. So you get two different versions. I prefer it spelt like this without with an I, but she's also referred to as a Scotta in some books. But
that's
it's
so
quite
incredible.
incredible. I mean, imagine if she hadn't landed here in Ireland, the whole history of Ireland and Scotland would be completely different.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and that's it's so because I was going to ask you about that her descendants then her lineage through the Malaysians, the Gaels, and then coming
Mm,
over to Scotland. It feels like it's this really important preservation of a an ancient royal lineage
mm,
that was almost wiped out. But this one woman managed to escape, get help to escape, and bring that lineage, almost like seed it in the most sacred kind of way, seed
mm,
that through Greece, whether some treasures were left there or and then Spain and then Ireland. It feels like it actually feels really important. The more you're talking about her, and her descendants, the more important it feels that she
yeah, well,
survived.
I think it's just absolutely incredible the story and the influence that her legend, if you want, has had on Irish and Scottish cultures is just incredible. His connections to the Stone of Scone or the Stone of Destiny as well, which is like here. I believe the Leofol is actually in Scotland, and what we have up
So,
at Tara
yeah,
isn't the real thing. I think
uh-huh,
the real thing is actually in Scotland, which was for a long time stolen by the English monarchy.
yeah.
But if you look at, there's a document, I think it's the Declaration of Independence. I can't forget where it's held now. This document, which was sent to the Pope in Rome by the Scottish, uh, it basically claimed their sovereign independence, tracing their lineage all the way back to Scotia, and saying, "Look, we're an independent nation. We have a right to rule. We have a, a sort of a divine providence in that our kings are descended all the way back to this queen, this pharaoh, who she would have been a pharaoh as joint ruler of Egypt. So said, look, we're legitimate. We're much older than England, you know. So don't dismiss us."
Yeah.
So there's a copy of that in written in Latin, and it's been translated into English. I've got a picture of the document in here. Let's see if I can find it and quickly show it to you. But yeah, there's only one copy left in existence, I think. Um,
Amazing.
but they used their lineage as justification for their right um, to fight for their own independence and not be subordinated to Edward. I think it was Edward the First. One of the Norman Plantagenet rulers. The later Norman who um, who tried to conquer Scotland. And you know about William Wallace and Robert the Bruce and all that. They were these people. Robert the Bruce was descended from that line, and famously, you know, thrashed the English at the uh, I think it was Battle of Bannockburn. Anyway, they got routed, and Scotland retained its independence basically until they accidentally sort of bankrupted themselves and were forced by their own financial mistake of trying to start a colony in what's now Panama. That's the
Yeah.
only reason that Scotland actually had to join the union with England, not because they were defeated militarily, but because they put all their eggs in one basket with this sort of like financial venture in South America, and it ruined the country. Yeah,
Wow.
it's amazing,
That's,
isn't it?
it's so fascinating because I live in Falkirk in central Scotland,
Mm,
and so I'm not far from the battlefields of Bannockburn, or
mm,
indeed the battlefields here. There were two different battles of
yeah,
Falkirk as well, and that stone, so the stone of Scone or Scone. So when King
yeah.
Charles was being made king,
It was brought back
it was
down. I think
brought
it's
back
back in
down.
Perth now, isn't it? I
It's
think it's in
back,
Perth Museum, yeah.
yeah,
But I
because
mean,
that
it should
was
never have been taken. That was a real power play. I think it was Edward the First or Second that stole it as a sort of up yours to Scotland to say, look, we've got your holy stone now, and all our kings will be crowned and on this stone that belongs to you. So it was a huge sort of raspberry or, equivalent of, very rude finger signs, sort of in a sort of a literal sense as opposed to metaphorical. They literally stole the most holy object that they had and ran off with it and used it in Westminster Abbey for what, best part of 1,000 years, you know?
yeah,
And finally, of course, Charles himself is actually descended from the Scottish line via James V of Scotland became James I of England. So they're all descended from, they're all Scottish, basically. If you go back far enough, all of that line, apart from it's got the Stuarts got sort of somewhat messed up with the arrival of William, but I think it would have been Mary would have been a granddaughter or great granddaughter of James V of Scotland. So that line did continue through one of the daughters into the current royal family, which is a real mixture. They're a massive mixture of Dutch and German and Russian and British. But they've got a
yeah,
bit of Scotland still in the genes there. They're still directly descended back to the Dalradian kings of Scotland, but only just a small bit through various intermarriages. But then, if you look at the Renaissance period onwards, all these different royal houses all marrying each other, they're all second cousins of everybody, you know. It's
yeah.
quite scary, really. That's why they all look the same as each other.
It kind of makes my head spin trying to,
Yeah.
that's where you need the family tree, which is so helpful. Yeah, so I wanted to ask about these treasures, these powerful artifacts, like the stone of Scone, or what perhaps Meritat and Scotia brought with her. And I'm just wondering, you know, is that what you're writing and the resurgence of this kind of royal lineage, do you think she's helping to show us the way back to sovereignty, that true sovereignty within
Yeah,
each of us?
I would think so. If you think about what happened there, right? Herself and her husband, they didn't just sit in a ship and have, afternoon tea. They were there on the battlefield. And she died fighting with her people. It's very different now. The old idea of monarchy was very much being accountable. You got benefits, but you had accountability, you had responsibility, you had obligations. But you look at modern monarchy across the world, they have all the benefits and no obligations and no accountability. Should you don't even pay proper taxes. And so I think there's a different kind of sovereignty that needs to happen, where really, I suppose today, when you think about royalty and sovereignty, it more applies to everybody and being sovereign in your own life, as opposed to these people up there who have everything. But, part of sovereignty is owning your actions and being accountable for yourself, not just getting the benefits, but actually also being responsible. Whereas modern monarchy is the opposite of that. What responsibility do they take for anything? What do they do to help other people? In real terms, where is the accountability? So I think when you look at ancient sovereignty, ancient monarchy, there's been this split where it lost its purpose, it lost its meaning a long, long time ago. And then you have many, many generations of rulers who have not had to take any responsibility for anything. They've just reaped the benefits of their position without actually doing anything for anyone else. So I think, this is we've all, so many people have suffered, haven't they, as a result of, people hoarding everything for themselves. And I think there's sort of a movement towards sort of reclaiming our own sovereignty and not being beholden to these sort of people who've been elevated to this incredible status who have just let us down. You look at how we put politicians on a pedestal and then they let us down. I think we've got to stop doing that with, the lawyer, the judge, the doctor, whatever, the royal person, the lord, the politician. We've given them so much power. And what have they done? They've abused this power and just feathered their own nests. And I mean, if this woman was prepared to go and die with her people to try to achieve their goals, that says a lot about how she saw herself. She could have just sat in the ship and waited till it was all over, but she didn't. She was up there on her horse and she fought alongside everybody else. And she
Oh,
paid the ultimate price, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Can you
That's
imagine
so,
any modern royal monarch doing that?
no, no, it's not part of the royal duties. It's too dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's exactly what this event is about. It's the queen that is amongst her people, no longer locked away in the castle or walking on the red
Mm.
carpets. She's out there with them, fighting with them, playing, loving, and gifting the treasures of that lineage as well.
Mm. Yeah. I think that's the real crucial difference here. And I think uh people would like to have more accountability across everything. I mean, even like with the history itself, how we've not had access to truth, to the true history of the world, really. And now with the internet and more new archaeology and so many things are now being discovered about us, our past, our ancestors that no, we didn't know because it was concealed, it was kept from us, you know, because that that knowledge makes you powerful, it makes you more centered, you know who you are. Whereas keeping people in the dark disempowers you, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So I think there's a massive sea change in how people are. And I think this whole kind of hierarchical pyramid structure of modern life, I think it's going to be dismantled. And we'll end up with a fairer, more reasonable society where people can be sovereign over their own lives and not feel that they've got to go off and serve some big important person or big corporate interest or whatever it happens to be.
yeah,
Um, I suppose it's taken a long time, but I think we're in the middle of this process of massive change.
yeah. Yeah, and it's a really important message for people to hear, to underline that we have that power within us and that the time of the guru or the person on the throne, because that's the message, is to return to our own throne, our own seat of power. It's here.
Mm.
And what would you say then on your journey and in-depth deep dive into Meritaten or Scotia? What would you say if she was here today speaking, what would you say her key message is for people now?
Well, it's hard to know really, because there's so little actually about her herself. Even with Mary Taten's life, we do know a bit about her, but it's fragmentary. So you kind of really have to guess. But I think what's clear is that she she must have loved her family. She um um she doesn't appear to have had any children in Egypt. Um, and if they did, if she had done, they were deceased. And Tutankhamun's two children died, unfortunately, as infants. So she obviously wanted to preserve herself, her lineage, her family, her life, and she did go on and have remarry and have children. But she had to go to extraordinary lengths to do that. And you think she left this what must have been an amazing life as a royal in Egypt and move across the Mediterranean, end up on you know, the edge of the Atlantic Ocean, and something very foreign. So she was prepared to sort of take a chance and something completely different transform her whole life. So I would say she must have been a very determined and confident and powerful woman who had belief in herself to do all this, you know. And I suppose the lesson from that is that if whatever you want to do is you may as well just try it. You might fail, but you'll get nowhere by not trying. So I would say I would only guess because I don't know, but she would encourage people to be whatever your hopes and dreams or plans are for your life, go out and get it because it's not going to happen by itself. If she just stayed there and done nothing, she probably would have just died. She'd have been killed more than likely. But she had enough gumption to get up and just first she asked for help. She got the help and she left, and then she carved out a whole new life for herself, you know. And a whole dynasty was she mustn't have known when she left what was going to happen. She couldn't have predicted that 3,000 years later there'd be a country named after her on thousands of miles away from where she came from.
Yeah.
But none of us know what's going to happen. You take your chances, you do your best, and if you don't try, you won't get anywhere. So I'd say she'd probably encourage people to take chances and follow your gut. If you really want to do something, do it. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really beautiful. And that she would then have a person called Luke Eastwood to bring all the pieces of the puzzles that she's left for you, possibly for people to bring her life together and to bring her to
Mm.
life again in as much as you can, which is really
Mm.
wonderful. So
Well,
thank
I'm
you.
hoping other people will run with what I've done. I would love to see an archaeological team go down there and do a proper dig. There was an inspection, 20 plus years ago, and they didn't really do anything. They went down, had a look. It wasn't a proper archaeological team, and they sort of dismissed it. But the thing is, you need a helicopter to fly in, all the LiDAR and all that stuff, all the proper equipment. There's no road. There's just a path, and you've got these little footbridges across the river, several of them, to get down there. It's not an easy sight. It would cost a lot of money to go and do that. But I'm hoping that as interest increases, people become more aware that maybe somehow they'll get the funding to actually go and look. Because there's two graves there. There's the horse and there's Scotia. Yeah.
Mm.
So it would be amazing if they were excavated respectfully, of course. I hope they wouldn't actually be uninterned. I hope they'd leave their bodies there. But if you have got a horse and a woman there, that pretty much would prove that it's real. That it isn't just a legend. But I think to get the naysayers to actually acknowledge this, that's what it needs. That's what it will take. It will have to be dug up and excavated properly. But when you look at perfect example of something where people would just dismiss it was Göbekli Tepe. Until it was actually excavated, no one would have acknowledged that such a civilization could have existed that far back. But now you've got such amazing proof that no one can dispute it.
Yeah.
So I think the same with Scotia's story. If you could find the evidence, if they found a skeleton, they found like Egyptian jewelry, etc., and artifacts there, you couldn't dispute it then. It would be
Yeah.
impossible to dismiss it. So I'm hoping that will happen in the future.
Yeah. Yes. And so do I. And I'm sure so many of the listeners and viewers as well will want that to happen too.
Mm.
And in the meantime, you are still writing, prolific
Yes, yeah.
author.
Well, I'm working on another book at the moment, and I've actually produced a novel, which is out in the end of September, which actually involves Scotland and Ireland. This is it, called The Hereafter.
Wow.
And it's sort of, I suppose it's a supernatural book. It's sort of a thriller. So it involves three, well, I suppose in this it's four different countries because in this future I've imagined England uh, is completely separate from the former UK. So Scotland's a separate country, and Ulster is a separate country, and Ireland's a separate country. They're all, you know, uh, and it's really a story about this author from Donegal, and he has a life-changing experience, which sort of involves sort of a near-death experience. I don't want to say too much, but then the story kind of goes on from that, really. Um, so it does, parts of it are in Scotland and Ulster, and then into the western side of the Republic of Ireland as well.
Uh,
Um, so yeah, I can't say too much about the story without ruining it for people. But I had a lot of fun writing this, and for me, it's sort of a way of discussing a lot of spiritual questions
yeah.
and about the meaning of life and whether there is or isn't a God and such things. So I hopefully it's sort of exciting as a thriller, but there's a sort of underlying current of spirituality in the book as well.
Wonderful. And I'll put a link to that on your speaker page that people can access and
Oh, thank
pre-order
you.
or yeah, and connect. And
Yeah.
also people can order Scotia, your Scotty book.
Yeah. Well, I have it on my own website. It's on like the big sellers as well. But um, if people buy it from me, you get a signed copy if you get it off my website.
Amazing. Amazing. And your free gift as part of this event. Would you like
Yeah.
to
Well, I
speak about
was
that?
I was thinking, well, probably a free copy of this would be the best thing to. So there'll be whoever wins it, I'll dedicate it to them, put their name in it as well and sign it, and they'll just receive that whenever the draw will be. So
Yeah. So
yeah,
people
we'll
will
just put the
email
names
you.
into a hat and pull them out, I guess, is how
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Yeah. The old-fashioned way.
Yeah, yeah, I've not got the technical ability to sort of, write some computer algorithm to do it for me. So I'll just have to write out bits of paper, fold them up, and bung them into a bowl or a hat, and see who wins that way.
Perfect. So
You
people can
know.
email you, send you an email if you're interested in to enter the draw.
Mm.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
perfect.
and then I guess should set a date for that, really, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah, you can let me know and I'll put it on your speaker page because the summit
Great.
ends on the 12th of August, so it could be
Yeah,
maybe after that.
yeah, probably a couple of days after that might be good. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Perfect.
Mm.
And anything else that you've got on? I know you do some in-person talks and events, so anything else you want to
Yes, well,
share?
I've got something going on in the Kenmare Arts Festival for anyone that happens to be around. Uh, that runs from the 2nd to the 16th of August. There's lots of interesting stuff going on there, and yeah, there'll be a launch for this new book over in County Carlow at the
Mm.
towards the end of September, around the time of the equinox. I think it's going to be the 19th, which is just before the equinox. And then I'm hoping really to take a bit of a break from writing once I've finished the new book, which is out in August 2027,
Wow.
and go back to doing some more art because I've been doing loads and loads of writing. And then, I'm interested in other art forms too. And um, it would do me no harm maybe just to take a break from writing for a year, maybe, because I've got another couple of things which are almost finished. So I'll just get them done and then I think stop for a bit, and go back to doing painting and photography for a while.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you for all your work and for your perseverance as well of putting this book together for people.
Oh,
It's
thank you
just
for having
brilliant.
me. Well, it was a lot of work and it really pushed me because although I've had a bit of an interest in Egypt since I was a kid, I stumbled across a book of Egyptian mythology when I was about 10 in the school library. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I never really kind of got involved in it in a sort of academic sense. So it was because I know that people are so particular and there's so much archaeology in academia, I thought I really had to get that stuff right. So that was a huge challenge for me. So it really pushed me in terms of, my research and writing. And so it was hard, but I'm glad I did it. It was a real challenge, probably the hardest thing I've had to do in terms of my writing career.
Yeah.
Because if you make a mess up with the archaeology stuff, you'll be sort of 1,000 people and jump on you and tell you you've messed it up, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. People will always let you know.
Yeah. So I had to do, double, triple check everything and ask. But I was very lucky, and then some academics did help me when is this correct? I've got this right, or and they would very kindly gave their time to make sure I, put me right if I made a little mistake or whatever.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful to all those people that did help me with little bits because I was in sort of territory that I'm much more familiar with the sort of the Celtic kind of texts and all that kind of thing than I would be with Egyptian um, history.
Yeah. Yeah, well, thank you. And it's been such a joy learning more
Thank
about
you.
your work and also Scotia, Meritaten. So, yeah, thank you. And to everyone watching, we will see you again soon. Bye for
Oh, thank you
now.
so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.
Queen